Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Kyle Stutzer back at it again with another episode of the Voices of Value podcast. Today, we have another, what I say, fire guest on the show. I try not to disappoint you guys, and I don't think I will today. So, with that being said, we'll just have Mr. Pete Moore introduce himself to the people. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me on the show. I know you've been a listener of my podcast, Halo Talks, for several years, so I appreciate getting the reciprocal invite here, and look forward to having you on our talks at one point in the future here. But for listeners on your end, I've been working in the health and fitness industry since August 1st of 1999. I went to work for a private equity fund down in South Florida that the day I started working there, they had a letter of intent to buy Gold's Gym International in Venice on off Abbot Kinney. But Abbot Kinney was not the safest place to walk around versus it is now. And we were partnering with the largest Gold's Gym franchisee who had a dozen clubs out of the Virginia, Maryland, and downtown DC area to basically buy the franchisor in order to try to professionalize the company and grow Gold's Gym. So I was on the business side. And quick story before I start my intro is that this fund had a $200 million fund. The first deal that they announced that they were looking to staff and me to potentially work on was a company that had the diagonal soap patent in the airlines toilets and blue chemicals. And I was like, dude, I hope I don't get on that deal. Like, I'm not really that passionate about airplane, restrooms. The second deal was an agricultural tank business out of Ohio, being a New York City, native and grew up in the city. We don't know that much about agriculture except for eating. Not necessarily the supply chain components of it. And then they said, hey, we got this Gold's Gym deal. And I raised my hand. I said, hey, I've actually got a Gold's Gym tank top, which, were nice to have back in the day. I had a Gold's Gym membership down at a club called Spanish River Road down in near Boca Raton. And I was the intramural athlete of the year. So I was a sports guy back in the day at Emory undergrad. So I kind of parlayed my finance background into the Gold's asset and basically haven't left the fitness industry since. And last 15 years, started my own advisory firm and made some investments where we've done probably about a $1.6 billion of investments into what we now call the Halo sector.
I love it. I love it. You gave me so much to go off there. But my first question that I'm going to follow up with is, when you think back to like a young 16, 17-year-old Pete, what was your first gym membership? What gym did you first go to in New York City?
First gym membership, I think, might have been a Bally's Fitness on Old Country Road in Long Island. But we also used to mostly do workouts outside because I played soccer for the high school team. I played tennis and I played basketball. So we were in this little dungy gym at W. Tresper Clark High School back in the day. I didn't really get my first like full scale real membership, I think, until I got back to New York, and I was at a Crunch Fitness back in 1994 on 13th Street. That was probably my first like real gym membership.
I love it. It's funny because I never had heard of Crunch Fitness until I went to visit my sister when I was like younger in New York City, and I was like, okay, this place isn't that bad. But I feel like the best crunches are in New York. But moving forward from there, so high school days, like you just touched on right there, I would love to kind of hear a little bit about where your interests in, let's just say, all things business, finance, entrepreneurship, anything in those like three arenas. Did that start early in life, high school, or wasn't it till college where you're like, oh, what am I going to do with my life? And you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go do this. What was your first
Yeah.
introduction to business entrepreneurship?
So two stories. One is that my father has always been my mentor. He was the chief executive officer of a beverage and food service equipment company. So if you go into a convenience store and you get a cappuccino, or you go into a Chinese restaurant and look at the grills and the fryers and any of the coffee canisters, there's a company called Cecilware that he was a CEO and had probably the cleanest resume of anybody I know because he worked there for like 32 years in Long Island City, right near LaGuardia Airport. And when I was growing up, I would always, on days off from school or before I went to camp, I'd spend a week or two at his factory. And they were actually producing these products and bending steel, and they had a spare parts cage that I worked in. I worked in this area where you put all the three ring binder, quality control, and like marketing brochures together. So I was always exposed to business, understanding how to like build things. Also, my dad used to come home, and the one thing that he will admit when he listens to this is he was not the best guy at delegating anything to anyone. So he used to come home with these computer page microfiches of like all the spare parts, and he would put down like what the price should be, and he would put down what the reordering should be. And while I'm doing my math at the dinner table after dinner, he's doing like his spare parts inventory management system, which was a very manual system at the time. But I always learned about business and relationships. I used to go to like union meetings with him, like the pre-meetings, and understand what's going on there. So I definitely got my taste of like being a business executive, from a very early age, probably like earliest I can remember is probably like 10 years old when I was out in California, and I went to a meeting with the head of the labor union, and they had a spare parts manufacturing plant in Watts, California. They had one in China, and they had one in Long Island City. So that's where my first kind of exposure and kind of like understanding of business came from. And the second was when I was in second grade. I just remember that I went down to Florida. I used to go to Sanibel Island. If you know that, it's like on the west coast of Florida. I used to bring back all these shells, and somebody like must have mentioned to me, why don't you go get those little googly eye things? So I used to like glue these little googly eyes on these seashells and get like little jewelries to like hang them on. And I would
I
sell
love
them for
that.
like $1 or $2 to like every other kid in
I
class,
love
all
it.
these like
I love
seashell
it.
stuff. So I kind of like learned as an entrepreneur of just like selling cool stuff. But I had the luxury of like being able to play high school sports without having to get a job. I think there's a lot more pressure on kids and parents, to fund these sports. I don't know what sports did you play back in the day?
I didn't play any that needed to be funded, but I have a brother with three boys that play travel hockey year round, so I'm familiar
There
with
you
the
go.
thousands.
Thousands of dollars of travel sports and equipment, and like we used to play baseball, like you just need a glove, and now
Yeah,
I need like a sliding mitt, I need like shin guard, I need like it's crazy, like the
crazy. It's really
accessorize
crazy.
of athletes. So business kind of started then, and the other note, and for people listening on this podcast here is like the position you play on a sports team actually might help you figure out like who you are and like
Hmm.
what role you could play in business. So to give you an example, I used to play goalie in soccer back in the day. And the reason why I originally played goalie is because I didn't want to have to run because I used to eat a lot of sugar and sweets when the ice cream man would come around. Um, but then I got pretty good and I kind of leaned out. But the mentality of being a goalie, and there's a lot of articles about this. It's like the loneliest position on the field. It's also, you're actually in the game to make sure we don't lose. I'm not really actually in the game to make sure we win. So if you become a goalie, you kind of get used to like being on defense and not necessarily. I don't have to be the guy that scores like 3 goals, right? Because I
Yeah,
physically can't get to the other side of the field to
yeah.
do that. And then I played like roller hockey, which was a big deal back in Long Island. I always played defense. Baseball, I played third base. I think I took the most charges, often, like defensive charges
Yeah,
in
yeah.
basketball. So like, when you think about like who you are, it might help you figure out like what you want to be. So if you were, playing a goalie role, you might be really good as like an advisor to a company. You might really be good at, being maybe something like the COO or the CFO. And if you were a striker or a goal scorer, maybe you're really good at sales. Maybe you're really good at like account management. Maybe you're really good at, things that like have instant gratification of winning that
Hmm.
will allow you to kind of be out there and I think sports is probably the most important lesson and tool for people to actually understand that, there's all this bullshit out there, by the way, if I could curse on this
Yes, you can.
podcast a little, is like Sam Altman, the guy with the open AI, he's talking about there's gonna be like a one person, $1 billion companies that come out there. And I'm like, you know what, dude? Like I haven't seen like one person win a soccer game. I haven't seen one person win a hockey game. So like, why don't you like tone down this like lack of human interaction and lack of like what a team could do better than an individual could do, and
Hmm.
focus on like surrounding yourself with winning people and try to like elevate them to be even better. And then have like a very common goal and common mission. So my point of that is like team sports, I think is extremely important. We wrote a book, Dave and I, called Time to Win Again, which is basically like a caricature book that 52 takeaways from team sports to ensure your business success. And it's
Love
kind
it.
of like it's kind of like good to great meets. Where's Waldo? Because we've got a lot of caricatures in there. But it makes a point of like if you're on a team and things aren't going well, what do? You take a timeout. Nobody in business takes a timeout to like fix part of their business. Also, if you think about all the time, effort, and energy people spend after a Sunday football game, like rewinding the tape, like let's actually scrutinize each play. Imagine a company did that in the fitness industry. You're in the industry, right? And said,
Hmm.
hey, man, what's my sales script? Why did like 10 people cancel their memberships last month? Like, let's figure out not 10, like 100, on average. Let's figure out like what we're doing wrong. And I was at this trade show the other day and we were talking about the attrition of and like using like AI to like help you, maintain relationships. I'm like, you got to look at the new age of fitness in my mind is that if I'm paying you as a personal trainer and I'm paying you, Kyle, I'm paying you like $500 a month, the only reason like I would break up with you, right, and cancel is if I'm not getting results or you and I don't have a good personal relationship or I move out of
Hmm.
town. Those are the only
Hmm.
three reasons that you and I would break up, right? If I had a personal training, monthly retainer with you. So I feel like there's a lot of clubs and fitness operators out there that are spending a lot of time looking at the data and they're not really like understanding that this is a relationship business. And if someone's only paying $30 a month, just think about this, dude. They're paying $30 a month, which you can't even buy like lunch for 2 days or one in New York
Facts.
City or LA anymore, right? Yeah. You pay $30 to use my like $1 million health club. If you cancel your membership, like you tell me I didn't even provide $30 worth of value, like
Yeah.
that's I missed something there. So I'm hoping that as we bring more and more people into the fitness industry and to live a healthier lifestyle, in this acronym I'm trying to proliferate health active lifestyle outdoors with Halo, is that we don't lose people during that process because we look at them as a credit card and we look at them as a member. We don't look at them as like, hey, I'm building a relationship with you. Let me help you achieve your goals. And then you're gonna stay and then you're gonna tell everybody else about it.
100%. Yeah, and it's funny because I wish I could remember the book, but it was like one of the first strength and conditioning books I read to just like, try to get a little bit more educated in the industry a couple years ago. And like on the first page, it's talking about how these health clubs, just talking about how the model's built. Like, all right, you get you in, then we forget about you to get more people in, to then forget about you to get more people in. And we don't really care about you staying. We're more cared about like how to get more people. Anyways, it's
Yeah, it's
just
like it's like a new
yeah,
member initiation, and like
yeah.
we're gonna onboard you. It's like, dude, you like onboarded me onto like a diving board, and then you just let me walk on the back of it. It's
Very
crazy.
accurate, very
Yeah,
accurate, very
yeah,
accurate. And you just mentioned health, active lifestyle, outdoors, and I was going to leave the question for a little later, but I think we should just throw it out there right now. Talk to me a little bit about the origin of this term. So the what I really want to know is like if you can remember, can you walk me into the room that you were in, and or like the moment you were in when that like popped in your head? You're like, you know what? I'm going to try to coin this term and continue to push it, and why it's important to you.
yeah. So 10 years ago, Dave and I and we got 8 people that work in my investment firm, advisory firm. So we help people buy and sell companies. So we help raise capital. And we've worked with like a lot of Gold's Gyms, Orange Theory, LA Fitness, New York Sports Clubs, Crunch. and we put together a lot of these business deals to bring capital into the space. And there was one time I was sitting in his office, Dave, you'll remember this, but we had these little offices in this high end WeWork. It was called Blender. And I remember I was on a conference call and they had one of those, like one of those like spider phones, like those speaker phones that look like that. And I remember I was like leaning in. I was trying, and I was saying to somebody like, "No, this is like an awesome wellness idea." And I just listened to myself say the word wellness, and I'm like, "Pete, you're so full of shit. Like, why are you using like what is inspiring about this word wellness?" So I ended up like going back to like my stand up desk, and I'm like, "Where did the word wellness come from?" And it turns out that there was a guy, really nice guy, at the Mayo Clinic back in the 1950s, and his name was Dr. Halbert Dunn. And he was looking at all the data of people getting sick and all these chronic diseases. And he basically said, all right, I got to come up with the antonym of the word illness. So if you're not ill, then you're well, which basically means like you're not sick, right? And it's basically saying like you're not sick. Okay, so we're going to build an industry based on like not being sick when guys like you are out there like trying to inspire people and motivate people and make people stronger and make people more confident, look in the mirror and not worry if you fall down, you're not going to break your hip, and knowing that you can like play sports at pretty much whatever age you want. And I'm like out here touting this word wellness. It's just like, it was such like a throwback. And I'm like, I got to come up with something better than this. And it probably took like 18 months of just like tinkering around with, other words and letters. And I woke up at like literally, Collins, I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. One morning, I'm like, holy shit, like this acronym HALO. Almost like there's this game that my grandma used to and I used to play called Boggle, where it had like
Mhm.
all the different letters on it and you make words. And I'm like, wow, this could be called like health, active lifestyle, and outdoors. And that's basically what it's all about. It's about creating this like halo effect that if I make you better, then people are going to ask you and say like, hey man, you look better, like your skin looks awesome, like, or you look stronger, or that shirt looks like it really like fits you, or
Yeah.
maybe it's like maybe you got to get a bigger shirt because you've been lifting, or man, like you just played flag football with us and I thought like you couldn't breathe, like a couple of years ago. Now like you're like
Yeah.
fit again. That's like living like a halo lifestyle. That's living like a halo aspirational place that other people want to be at. And thankfully, over the last like 15 years, people have decided, hey, you know what? I want to go on like this yoga retreat instead of going to Vegas, or I want to go and hike through some rainforest, or go to some national park instead of going to like Panama City. So like people are starting to like move into this category of like, hey, this is how I want to. This is who I want to be. I want to eat protein bars. I don't want to eat, Snickers bars anymore. And it's all kind of coming together, but like there was no umbrella. And everyone started to use this word wellness as if it was like the wellness movement. It's like, dude, that's like about being not sick. So to
Hmm.
continue my rant before you interrupt me, I've got buddies of mine that out of college, and I'm slowly almost twice your age, bro. I know I don't look it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I know I didn't do anything. It's not plastic. It's cool. It's all natural. You know, my point is that I got,
Moisturizer.
yeah, there you go. My buddies from college who graduated and started working at some of these banks, they used to call themselves stockbrokers, right? You
Hmm.
got buddies, oh, my buddy's a stockbroker, my buddy's a stockbroker. And then about 20 years ago, they said, I'm not a stockbroker, I'm a financial consultant, right? And then in the last 10 years, they've all changed their name to what they are, I'm in wealth management. Okay.
Hmm.
Every single mutual fund, everybody who works in any kind of bank, like I'm no longer a stockbroker, I'm no longer a financial consultant, I'm in wealth management, right? So they've changed what their name is, which makes you think much differently about them because words matter. And then you got people that were in the oil and gas industry. None of your buddies that work at any oil and gas company ever say like, yo, bro, I work in oil and gas. No, dude, I'm in the energy business, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves energy. Everybody needs energy. I got clean energy. I got really bad energy. I got coal, but let's just call it
Hmm.
energy because like energy on top of everything else is like feels good. Um, so I got people running around our industry telling me like they're in the wellness category. I'm like, why don't you be like a halo evangelist or like a halo professional, or say something that actually connotes what you're trying to do, which is basically like make America less obese, make
Yeah.
America have less childhood obesity, and let's get rid of loneliness. Because if I can get you into a health club or a studio or a fun run or on a beach workout, like you're gonna have more friends. Like it's inevitable if you get off your couch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it
And
came up. So it came up with like a frustration of me like saying the word wellness into one of those speakerphones, and then be like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be like, dude, I think I got it. And then I read it by Gallon, and we're like, dude, this is it. And we just kind of went all in.
I love it. Yeah, when I first heard it and when I first found your podcast, I was like, "Oh, this is fire." And when on one episode, I think you basically explained kind of what you not the necessarily the story, but about the changing of names in specific industries and why it's important to really kind of like in the best way possible try to describe what you're actually trying to do for people. And I remember at that point, I listened to that and I was like, let me try to. I mean, I haven't been consistent with this, so I'll admit to that. But I was like, let me try to switch. I was like, maybe when people ask me what do you do, instead of being like I'm a personal trainer, I'm like I'm a human performance consultant. I
That's
was like
awesome.
thinking, I was like, what can I use? And I think it was human. I was like, I'm a human performance coach, and
How did
just
that
trying to
go?
figure out well, that's what I mean. I haven't been consistent, but I
Oh, okay, okay,
plan
okay.
to as a reimagine, like as a reminder from what you just talked about there, reminded me like, yeah, I was listening to episode of his talking about this, and I was like, oh yeah, I should go with like a human performance coach and really stick to that. And it really gives you the opportunity to explain to potential clients or potential, just people who are interested in what you're
Yeah.
putting out there, like what you're genuinely trying to do. So I think that's really important. I
Yeah.
love that you
Also,
did
from
that.
your standpoint, like, like the word human performance coach or professional, that's probably like within the next couple of years, that's where the industry is going to be. So if you start saying that now, people are going to be like, hey, man, what is that? And that kind of like starts the conversation. But I think health coaching right now is, health coaching with the actual training. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are doing health coaching. That's more connotes to like nutrition
Yeah.
planning
Hmm.
and like kind of like making sure like you're moving it all. So perform, health performance coach or something. There's a guy that I just did a conversation with, ex NFL player. His name's Larry
Larry.
English,
Yeah. Hmm.
and he's using the right buzzwords in my mind. And then if the other thing I was saying is like if somebody works with you and your client, and they got a job, they might have like a girlfriend, they might have a couple of kids, but like whatever they do with you is going to be like one of the top five things that they do in their life because they're
Yeah.
like focusing on their health and they're trying to optimize who they are and get stronger so they can lift their kid up, instead of like hold their kid's hand, or like walk the kid or run with the kid or ride on a bike and not be out of breath. So like the cost that they should pay or the how valuable that is, it's like, well, okay, they got to pay their rent, so I can't charge them as much as their rent. I probably can't charge them as much as their car, right? I can't charge as much as like the food that they put on their plate, and I can't charge as much as they pay for all the kids to go travel hockey. But I can probably charge right underneath that amount. That's probably $300 to $500 per month because that I think is where the money that people spend that's disposable should be requisite with what they're how valuable it is to them. So I don't want
Yeah.
people like underprice,
I
the
love
value
yeah,
of
and
being
that's
in the Halo sector.
it's so important for especially professionals in my space, like on the personal training side of things, and especially the ones who've been in the industry for long enough that they really have like a high level skill set, but they're still so scared to charge a certain amount. And if they're not scared, then they struggle to communicate their value to a potential client. So if you're listening to this right now, tap into developing that skill set because it's super important and listen to what Pete just said right there. But
Yeah,
let's move
agreed.
to my next question is, 570 episodes of Halo Talks. I would love to hear who is one or a few of the most impressive minds you've had on the podcast. I know there's been plenty of people I've really enjoyed on your show, but if there's a few names that stand out, and I know you want to say all 500 plus, but
No,
if
I won't say
there's
that.
yeah, if there's a mind that was really impressive that came on the show and you were really impressed with how they spoke or maybe what they're doing with their business, who stands out?
Yeah, I'd say I'll take two and give you some background on it. So one, there's a guy down in Tampa who's been a good friend of mine for 25 years. He used to work at Crunch Fitness, then he worked at a group called Lifestyle Family Fitness, and then he was one of the co-founders, the original four people that turned Orange Theory Fitness into 1,000 location chain. His name's Terry Blachek, Blachek. And this guy has been around the block from standpoint of like growing teams, understanding systems, understanding pre-sale, understanding like the four-wall unit economics of running a business and take care of people, take care of your employees, take care of your members, and actually like create a culture that is scalable, that you could grow, as well as also understanding that you can't grow unless you have the people that actually like know how the team operates and like what the playbook is. So the reason why I mentioned him is because if anyone watches that or listens to that podcast, these were all audio at the time. He's got a lot of cliches that he likes to say, and they're very catchy. One of them is, I said, how fast can you grow your Orange Theory business? And he's like, well, I've got access to money, so it's not money; it's actually people. And he said this one line that a lot of people in the industry now know because I say it all the time is you cannot microwave a manager. You have to crockpot them. So the amount of like time, effort, energy that you have to put in to create an employee that understands all the different components of how to run the business, how I'm going to have you interact with your members and your team, what this place stands for. Cleanliness is important. How we're going to have conversations when maybe they're difficult conversations. So, that idea of like crock potting somebody and like putting in the time, I went into a location the other day. It was one of these workout recovery places as an example. And I started asking questions like nobody knew the answer. I'm like, has anyone been trained here on like what you're selling or like what goes on here? If I ask you, can I take a cold plunge and then can I go to infrared sauna? Like, which one am I supposed to do first? Nobody fucking knows. Like, what to teach? Like, if you're gonna be in this business, like, teach me what's going on. So my point is that Terry was able to basically say, look, I built businesses before. I've seen everything. Like, I got to crockpot people, and I've got to actually put the time into building awesome entrepreneurs. The second podcast that I would say is there's a guy who runs one of the largest private equity funds in the US, and it's called TSG Consumer Group, and it's out of San Francisco. And his group was the one that took Planet Fitness from 500 locations up to 1,500 as a franchisor, and then sold it into the public market, so it's a publicly traded company. He also was an investor in Muscle Milk, Core Power Yoga. He's also now the investor in Solid Core, which I think is one of the best Pilates-ish workouts, in the US that's going to continue to scale. And some of the things that he talks about in his podcast about looking at investments, looking at people, looking at the unit economics, and also the one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs need to do, and if there's a takeaway people have from here, is you got to say no a lot of the time. If you want to stay in your lane and actually like build a real business and become a specialist, not an expert. Okay. Like experts in this guy, another podcast that we did with a guy, Duff McDonald, recently talks about like all these experts tell us stuff, but they're not like actually the people that like do the work. They're like in the data where people that are specialists are like you like building your optimization business, like you're a specialist, like you actually get the work done and get results for people. I'm a specialist. Like I help people get deals done. I help bring money into a company. I don't talk about it. I talk about it afterwards, but I'm actually doing it. And then I take time to like talk about it. So this guy, Pierre Lecomte at TSG, kind of walked through how you make good investments, how you say no a lot of the time, and that it's okay to say no more times than not, because the deal that you don't do is usually better than the deal you actually did, if that makes sense.
That makes a ton of sense, and I thank you for sharing that. That does bring me directly to a question I had, which was, if there's one, founder or business owner that came to you to talk about investment or talk about supporting them, him or her, with helping their business grow or getting their business opened, and you had to say no to the deal. How do you kind of navigate the conversation after you say no to somebody? So if you're thinking of somebody from your past right now and you had to be like, hey, like, I don't think this is the right opportunity for us to be able to help you, but here's a few quick tips. How do you manage the relationship after that Is it completely, gone? Or do you feel sad? Are you like, dang, I should have said yes? I don't know if that's a clear enough question, but
Okay, so like going back to sports, right? My mom used to always say to me, make sure like this kid, is part of the team, or like invite this, my friend's son to play wiffle ball with you, or play like flag football or soccer, whatever. So I'm always trying to like include people, not to exclude them. I also got like a rescuer mentality, which is not a good thing. Where like I want to help everybody, and I'm like, look, I can't help you, but I can help you make introductions, or I can't help you, but I can do a podcast, and you can use the podcast to go and talk to investors. So like the way this podcast started was to basically help us sell companies and do like an audio, summary of a business, like an infomercial, and then take that infomercial and then send it out to groups and say, hey, do you like how this guy Terry Blaychek, as an example, do you like how this guy talks about his business? Let me send you some information. And I had one of the private equity groups that ended up investing in him was quoting him from the podcast in the management meeting that we had, so that I knew that like that was going to be a win. But from a standpoint of like saying no to people, I used to just be like, look, your company's not sizable enough for me to be able to help you. I got people to pay to feed in New York, and like they don't work for free. So I gotta, only work on deals that I think are gonna happen. And I can't work on a lot of early stage deals. But if you treat people right, you tell them up front what your criteria is, and then you tell them, look, the reason why I can't work with you is because it just doesn't fit into our current criteria. But here's what I can do for you. I can make certain introductions, caveat that with the introductions I'm going to make, like don't be hustling those people for money. Be transparent about it. And then also, try and get them up, maybe get them on a Halo Talks, or get them on something called a 5-minute fast break if I think they have a good company. Or I'll just say, look, it's just not the right fit for us. But I do feel bad because I obviously want to help everybody. But there are times where I'll invest time and effort in looking at somebody's business plan, or looking at their company and say, look, I can't help you, but just if I could help you, let me tell you where this is maybe like off, or maybe that you need to like figure something else out. As an example, people come to us and they might have like 10 health clubs. And they come to us and say, I want to raise $50 million. I want to go build another 20 health clubs. And I'll say to them, so which one of these 10 that you built is like the prototype, which is the one you're going to basically show investors, like this, how much it costs, this is a layout, and then this is what I want to use your money for. And there was a guy, I remember this call actually. Guy's like, no, the prototype's going to be the 11th one. It's going to be the next one that I do that I don't have money to do on my own because the other 10, did go according to plan. I'm like, I can't help you with that because you got to build the prototype on your own in order to come to somebody like me to get you money to go and scale the business. So if I'm upfront about what stage business I'll work with, then things usually, like, I don't disappoint people.
no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in how you answered that, it's going to lead into our two probably final questions because I know we got to get you on that flight.
Yeah, we're good.
But you've mentioned being a compassionate hunter. What exactly do you mean by that? And you probably kind of covered it in your answer there, but talk to me a little bit about what it means to be a compassionate hunter in your space.
Okay, so to explain to the audience here, so my firm Integrity Square, if you came to us and you had a business, let's say you owned 10 Planet Fitness locations, Collins, and you said, I need money to go from 10 because I signed an agreement to go build 50. Can you help me get money for that? And I'll find our company will find the right private investment groups to partner with you. The second thing is you might say, hey, man, I got 10 locations. I don't want to do this anymore. I got guys banging on my door to sell the business. Integrity Square would represent you, and I'll get you business sold for the best price and best terms. Or you could say to me, hey, Pete, I got 10 locations. I don't want to go and build the next 40. Why don't you go? I'll sign you up as a buy side advisor and go hunt and try and find clubs that are between 15 to like 25,000 square feet that I could go and buy for $1 million each or 2 million each, and we'll rebrand them to Planet, so I don't have to go through the work of signing a lease and getting the construction done and doing a grand opening and hiring employees. I can just basically take that over. So so basically, if I'm doing a buy side, what I am is I'm like hunting for deals. Okay. Now you can hunt for deals and you can try and like buy businesses from people and take advantage of the fact that you might know more than they do related to like what their business is worth, how like to treat certain like their security deposit, they could get that back in a deal I do with them where they could leave it with the landlord. Um, if they sold some paid in full memberships at their club, that could be a deduction, or I could just say, look, those people don't really cost me anything to go onto the club. So when you're a compassionate hunter, I'll basically say, look, I'm going to try and work to achieve your goals as my client, but I'm also going to be compassionate that the seller that is selling you that business, like they probably risk their entire family and their family's finances and their relationships and probably didn't go to their kids' hockey games and didn't go to little league games. So like you got to treat the owner of that business with respect. And you got to say, look, this is the current market for what your business is worth. Maybe I can help my client like save a couple of dollars on some of these adjustments. We're not going to come in there and try to steal a business from somebody. And I tell that to my clients, like, oh, we're going to go do deals. We're going to go do market deals, and you're hiring us to hunt for you, but you're not hiring me to kill. You're hiring me to hunt and gather instead of hunt and kill. So that's my answer to like being a compassionate hunter. Because some people try to buy businesses and try and bully them into doing a deal and then give them like really bad terms. And the seller of the business doesn't hire somebody like us, and they don't know that like that's not a fair deal to them. And that's upsetting to me because people should get paid for the value that they create.
I
Granted,
love
if
that.
somebody owns a business and it's losing money, we're not going to pay them anything for it. Like reimburse them
Yeah.
because they failed. We'll take it off your
Reimburse them
hands.
is hilarious.
Yeah, they're like some people are like, well, I put $1 million into this. I'm like, yeah, but it's losing money. Like, so it's not. But you're going to
Yeah.
make it work. I'm like, yeah, my client's going to benefit from that because you didn't do it. So
Yeah.
that's compassion hunting.
I love it. I love it. And on the same, line, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about empathy plus action. So in a podcast that you did, you were talking about, founders coming to you and the need to be empathetic to what they're, struggling with or what challenges or maybe the business is struggling, but also, you know, there's a balance between being empathetic to somebody, but also, being like you need to produce some results, if that makes sense. So when you think about like having tough conversations in this world, especially when it comes to something that you know, people care a lot about and affects families and lives and food that people can eat, aka money, how do you practice the character trait of empathy? Does it come from just how you're raised, or is there a way for somebody who maybe isn't so empathetic to develop that ability to be more empathetic as a investor or advisor in this space?
So I think you can develop empathy, but I do think you either grow up having empathy around you and how people talk to other people in your family and your friend network, or you don't. So I think the short answer to that is that it's something that you should be aware of. And I think a lot more investors and people that get into capitalist, businesses forget that every deal has two people on the other side of it. And you want to work with somebody that you want to work with instead of like working with somebody who's selling you something that you don't trust, or you don't believe in. So, um, an example of like empathy would be if somebody comes to me and says, I've got let's go back to like this workout recovery as an example. And they say, hey, I want to go and raise money. What do you think? Like in my example with you on your 10 Planet Fitnesses, if we went and raised money and we raised $50 million, you said, I'm going to keep all my money in, I might be able to say, okay, you put your 50 million in on top of Collis's 20. Like we're valued what he brings to the table on his clubs at 20. And then you own 50 out of 70 if we stay in like that. So somebody might come in and you might come in and say, hey, man, I think my clubs are worth like 50. So I want to own 50-50 out of the deal. So my empathy is going to be like, well, look, man, like your numbers aren't as good as everybody else's. I think you're awesome. I think you have the ability to get money. But if I tell you that I agree with your 50 valuation, when we get into the market and everybody comes back at 20 to 25 million, you're going to be like, dude, do you even like, why'd you like set me up for failure or to be really disappointed in the value that I'm going to get, from this deal, because you might psychologically decide like, hey, that's not the number I had in my head of like how I wanted things to go down. So I think you have to be empathetic, because every entrepreneur has gone through peaks and valleys. I've done it with 7 businesses. A couple of them I wish I never did, but like it's like a stripe of experience that you have. And this guy told me a long time ago that experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So every entrepreneur that I work with will say, and when I tour clubs with people, and if you had your 10 planets, you'd be like, hey, Pete, this one was a home run. I crushed it. Everything went right. This is my mistake. I drove around town with a guy the other day. He's like, this is my mistake club. And I'm like, no, that was your experience club, right? You gained some experience at it. So that's
I
where
love
like
that.
the empathy kind of like rolls in, where I have to remind people that like, you're not going to bat 1,000 in baseball, right? Even like Otani, like he sits down 7 out of 10 times on a bench, maybe 6, maybe 5, right? But half the time, at least he's going back to the dugout and he's not getting to go around the bases. So if
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur, like stop thinking that you're gonna bat 1,000. Stop thinking that like, oh shit, man, I had a bad day. It's like, yeah, dude, what do you think you're gonna fucking win every single day? You go 365-0? Obviously not, dude. So if you go 20-10 this month, like then you're a playoff team, you know. As a complete aside, by the way, I'm watching SEC. Do you watch college football at all?
A little bit, a little bit. Pay attention to Alabama and MU a little bit.
Okay, so Alabama, right? Like these teams in the SEC all have like rock star, lineups. They spend like
Yeah.
$20 million on bringing these awesome kids in. Good for them.
Yeah.
And then they expect the coaches to go like 10-0 in the SEC. It's like, or they're going to lose their job. Like, are you kidding? It's like if you go like 6-4 or 7-3 in the SEC, and everyone's like loaded with 5-star athletes and like the best coaches, the best facilities. What do you?
Mm-hmm.
It's like crazy expectations for winning.
Exactly.
So what I would tell an entrepreneur is like everything you're doing, like don't get down. I've gone down on myself plenty of times over the last 25 years, and like thinking like I failed and like things aren't ever going to work out. This and that. That's just part of life. It's part of building a business. But what I do now more than anything else is I stay in my lane. Like my lane is Halo. My deals are like a certain size. My the people that we hire, like they have to be, act a certain way. Halo Talks has these types of companies on it. So like I'm very deliberate in saying no way more than I used to be. And I know exactly what I want to do. And that takes a long time to figure out.
I love it. I love it. Pete, there's so many questions that I want to ask you, but how about we end today's episode with a LinkedIn post I posted a year ago that I think is relevant to a few things you said today. Specifically, it came up when you were talking about the recovery center you went into. So maybe I can just hear your feedback on what I wrote here, and then we can
Yeah, go for it.
plug Halo Talks and wrap it up.
Awesome, bro.
Awesome. So I said, one of my clients said this to me today in the middle of our personal training session. There's nobody in an organization that has zero impact on the profitability of a company. Mind you, guy's a water guy in the Midwest, helps with like water plants. Long story short, interesting businesses. I'm sure you've seen lots of those.
Yeah, no.
And I thought to myself, wow, what a statement. In most large health clubs, you'll find a variety of different roles: the personal trainer, the group fitness instructor, the receptionist, gym manager, maintenance staff, childcare attendant, cleaning crew. And every single one of them can have an impact on the profitability of a facility. Spent the last 10 years working in and around health and fitness facilities. I cannot count how many times I've heard or watched someone leave a club to go to a competitor because the locker rooms were dirty, equipment was always broken, the club did not have childcare, the receptionist was on their phone and never made eye contact, their group classes were going. I could go on, but every department at your health club is essential to your bottom line. And more or less, I was just making a point around the locker rooms need to be clean. The equipment needs to be not broken all the time, because I was just frustrated. But what comes to your mind when you hear what I said there, and then we'll wrap for today.
3 things come across. 1, awesome post. Thank you for doing that, because that needs to get out there. The second thing I think of is a story where I was going around some clubs in Jacksonville with a client of mine, and there was this woman cleaning the facilities during COVID. Okay, she's like wiping down all the strength equipment. And then we do this club tour, and we had to go back to that same club at like 7 o'clock at night because That's where his office was. He left his laptop there, right? So we go back, and the same woman, I don't remember her name, Becky, maybe it was Becky. This woman's like cleaning equipment. And my client goes, we walk up to her like, hey, what are you doing here? You were here at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, this isn't your shift. She's like, I just want to make sure nobody gets sick. Like, I don't live that far. And I like had like a tear in my eye because like that woman, she gets it, dude. Now, so I 100% agree with you that everyone is part of like the revenue engine, and everyone's part of like the business model of what's going on in that club. That's the playbook in the club, right? I got to keep it clean. I got players that do different things here. I got specialists. I got people that sell. Those are my strikers in soccer. I got people that like make sure everything's clean and functional. Okay, those are my defensemen in soccer, right? I got the goalie who's like the CEO who makes sure that all this shit happens, but he's not out there championing it. He's making sure everything runs. Now, the part that's missing in the ending of your story, not from you, from the water guy, is nobody internally knows how much money the club makes. And that I want to change, because if everybody knew, hey, this club makes 500 grand a year, that's a lot of fucking money, dude. And I get 1% of the profits, or like we take 5% of the profits of that club and it gets distributed to all my maintenance people. Another
Yeah.
5% gets distributed to all my salespeople. Then you have 100% of people not only helping generate the profit of the club, but they're also impacted and benefiting and incentivized to do that. And a lot of people hold their information back and say, I don't want to give that information out. Like, people ask for more money, or, they'll tell other people. And it's like, it's like telling you, Carlos, hey, you're going to play on my football team. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what the score is at the end of the game. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Of course you're going to tell me the score, man. I just played a whole game for you. I played a whole month, right? It's your playing field. The health club, your playing field. Tell me what the score was. How to do? How'd the company do? Did we win? Did we lose? Right?
Yeah.
So it's a
I
great
love
post,
it.
but I think we got to close the loop on like disclosure to people, and then hire less people, give them more information, and let them do more work, and they'll stay with you forever.
Love it, Pete. Pete, you're a treasure full of knowledge, information, and experience, and I'd love to have you back on. But before that happens,
Appreciate it.
plug them. Where can they follow you? How can they support you? Website, social media. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've got a podcast called Halo Talks, HALO Talks.com. It's on Apple, Spotify, everywhere that you got your podcast listed as well. We also invested in a company. That's the one investment that I'm really excited about. It's called Higher Dose, www.higherdose.com. Red light therapy blankets, light masks, infrared sauna blankets. So if you want anything for the holidays, you go to that site and buy your loved one something that'll make them feel better. And then my investment firm, advisory firm, is called integritysq.com. So go Halo, live a Halo lifestyle, tell everybody you know. Let's get rid of all these sugar companies. Let's get rid of seatbelt extenders, and let's live a more awesome existence. So people like you help make that happen, Carl. So appreciate being on.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Pete Moore. See you later.